Hello and welcome back. My guest is the Major, Sinclair Leacock. He is the constituency representative for Central King. Sinclair, welcome back on this program.
Tony, it's always a pleasure to be here on this program or any other program for that matter with you. I thoroughly enjoy myself when I'm with
you. You seem to accept my invitations quite readily.
Well, we go back a little bit, Tony, so that if it brings some comfort to you, certainly.
I hope I'm able to comfort you in this program.
I see.
As we roll along.
Very well.
Now, we're going to talk, Sinclair, if I may, substantially about the party founder, Sir James Mitchell, having made some statements and voicing his opinions on an interview program last week. And I am going to ask in your personal capacity, because you are here on my invitation, really, as Sinclair Leacock. And I'm going to ask you in your personal capacity to just give me some of your views. So let me start up by saying, did you see the interview?
Yes, fortunately, I knew that the interview was going to take place, and I kept searching all evening for it, and I got it from the beginning. So I had access to all aspects of the discussion.
You have studied it in great detail.
Well, I haven't studied it. I don't have to study it.
It's very plain.
It's straight clear to me what was being discussed. Only for
was what the James had damaged to the end from where you see?
Well, to be very frank on that matter, I think that there are a number of things that were said that were before that they were not said. And I think that in many respects, we have been affected or impacted by the Sir James statement. Whether, in fact, I would use a strong term of damaging, I hesitate. But we would be advised to take very seriously the comments that were made and respond appropriately to his discourse.
Now, I don't know where the party stands in terms of its response to the interview given by Sir James. Are you in a process of damage control, or are you studying your response, and at some point in time you'd have a definitive position on the matter?
Well, you know, interestingly, there are two dimensions to the question that you raised, because you would have heard the leader of the party, Honorable Adam, indicate that he will view the program and he would make an appropriate response. That says that he probably wants to give a point of view that represents Adam Eustace's position on the matter. Now, in his privileged position, that may in fact incorporate both his views and that of the party.
Yeah.
My suspicion is that it may be more of himself than that of the party. And therefore, I can say that the party itself has in fact sat down and discussed how it would respond to Sir James. But Mr. Eustace is clearly entitled to do both whenever he chooses to do.
Yes. In fact, Sinclair, the interview with Sir James was all about, really, most of it was about Adam Eustace, your leader. And if I should just take a few points that were mentioned, there's this business of Sir James responding to the accusation that he treated Adam Eustace, the Honorable Adam Eustace, like a little black boy. And of course, a little black boy is a derogatory statement, it's a derogatory phrase. And he goes on to say that, you know, Adam Eustace he didn't treat Adam Eustace like a little black boy when he made him the Prime Minister, when he made him permanent secretary in particular ministry, when he gave him his job at the CDB, and so on and so forth, implying that really he was there for Adam. He was Adam's maker. Now, isn't there a bit of satire in this? Because one can see that in the way Sir James expresses this, he was not a little black boy when I did. He was not a little black boy when I did that. By doing that and claiming that you made it, you did this for him, you did that for him, you're really implying that he is in fact a little black boy. Are you seeing it that way?
Now, let me say something, Tony. First of all, I don't have an obligation in this program to choose between Sir James and Adam Eustace.
Yeah.
But I will call it as I see it. I'm unaware of the origin of the expression the little black boy in terms of this current debate.
Yes.
And so I don't know if something predated the interview in which Sir James used the expression. And you're quite right, it's a derogatory expression. For me, I wouldn't take kindly to anyone, any kind, any shade, any opinion, any status, referring to me as a little black boy. Because I never was and never will be. And so, to the extent that it entered the vocabulary, I think that Sir James has an obligation to withdraw the remark altogether. Let me say that. It is not something that you would want to have to discuss, even at a much lower level than that.
But mind you, Sir James is a plain-spoken person.
No, he's a plain-spoken, but that's not an expression, whether you're plain or baked or whatever you are, that anyone should use with respect to any post under any circumstances.
But he may not have introduced it. What he was saying is that people introduced that to him, that said, you treated Adam Eustace like a little black boy. Well, so he was simply responding to that.
Well, you see, that gives it a different dimension. Yes. In other words, it is not Sir James' creation. He's saying that he's reacting to a statement that other people may have clothing that people may have put in that expression. Either way, we really need to dispense with it. Because, I mean, under no circumstance can you look at someone or the start Adam Eustace and use those kinds of terms. Either being little or a black boy. He was never either of the two of them. I mean, Mr. Eustace has been described, always have been coming from a very cultured, value-laden family. I had the privilege of going to school. I know his mother much more I knew than the father, because he was principal at the prep school when I attended there. And you know how he was brought, in a very Christian home. You've heard him express in his own view the fact that his father put aside the insurance funds for him to go on to university. And at the time when he had his first and second degrees, he could have been anything that he wanted to be. And even if he didn't want to go on to an academic life, he perhaps could have gone into the father's family business at the time and made a name for himself. So he was neither of those expressions. He is a self-made individual with the blessings and investments, of course, of his parents.
So do you see it as unfortunate?
It's an unfortunate
but not so much the expression, but unfortunate that Sir James had to list virtually all the significant things that he did in making Adam Eustace the success that he is, because that's the implication.
No, but yes, it is unfortunate. I'll tell you what is unfortunate. Because it is to suggest that who he is today is a culmination of the life he's been living politically for the last 2 or 3 decades. And the fact is that, as I understood it, or even understand it now, is that Adam, in a sense, compromised his professional life by taking on the political responsibility. And let me say something, because I have a better appreciation of this than some people would. I recall distinctly when the New Democratic Party was at its lowest ebb, the year 2000 or thereabout, just before the Roadblock Revolution, when the party would meet at Shrewsbury House every day to address the crisis that we had in St. Kennedy. And Sir James made it very plain that he was standing down as leader of the New Democratic Party. And he asked who would come forward. 2 men presented themselves.
Do you mind calling him?
Jerry Scott, yes. Honorable Jerry Scott, he was at the time and still is,
yes.
And Adam Eustace. And the political milieu that existed at the time, it took courage, bravery, and commitment to come forward to lead the New Democratic Party. Because it was clear that they would get a heavy beating at the polls.
Yeah.
So you know you would have to be in a serious rebuilding. So I recall him coming forward that year. So he volunteered himself for political responsibility.
Do you think, though, that Mr. Eustace, I know we alternate from calling him Adam Eustace because he's familiar to us, but
whichever.
There we go. Mr. Eustace, do you think that he was in fact because?
Well, but it's clear. That is clear. I mean, Mr.
And would he have gotten there without the backing of?
He probably would not have. More than likely, he needed the blessings of Mr. Mitchell as founding leader. But to the same extent that we are giving Mr. Mitchell credit for his political savvy, he must have seen worth in Adam Eustace to elevate him to the front bench of his political party over many people who were there before him. and that in the end he got the nod over Jerry Scott. I believe must have had his own machinations back there in the engine room, which we were not seeing.
Yes.
So I have no doubt about it.
So Sinclair, clearly, Sir James did see worth in Mr. Eustace, because, as by his own admission, he facilitated, if you want, for the want of a better word, Mr. Eustace or backed him in getting many other positions prior to the leadership of the NDP. So he must have seen work in Arnhem. Is it your impression now, having listened to the interview, that there's a bit of disappointment at Sir James?
Well, there clearly is some disappointment being expressed or intimated here in Mr. James' time. But we're talking about the year 2000 or thereabout. I don't know how far back you're going, because we could even go further than that.
Well, I was actually going further back than that.
Even further back than that.
Because Sir James and Arnhem Eustace have had a long-standing relationship.
And to say that he saw word in Arnhem Eustace is still condescending.
Well, of course it is.
The fact is, here is an individual who would have gone to the St. Vincent Grammar School. Now, as we know it in the old days, 30, 40 people went into the grammar school.
Yes.
Then you came out of the grammar school. How many people went on to university? Even fewer. So the fact that he had gone on, not even to the University of the West Indies, but to a university in Canada, which took some challenge, and from a first and second degree, means that he had already prepared himself. I say that to make the point that he already had word that he brought with him.
And I agree with that. I agree.
So if you couldn't see that,
yes,
then something was wrong with you. But even beyond that, he came out of a social conscience and a strong political culture. He was there in I don't want to say the Black Power movement, but in the social movement of the DFM and the Educational Forum, the Debating Society, the Grammar School. He is always a socially and politically conscious person, and his writings can speak for himself. So it is more a fact that Sir James wanted to build on that, or to extract that, and to use it in another direction. I just want to make clarification.
And it's a useful clarification. Yes. Let's push on and look at some of the elements of the interview. And, I want to take this to another level by talking about the NDP itself, but we'll get there. Let's just bear with me.
Sure.
Now, the issue of Poco, because this interview with Sir James was pitched as, did Sir James sell out the UL? And this all came about on the issue of Poco. Poco, there was a meeting where, while you guys were there having your protest action, that same day, I think Sir James met with the Prime Minister, or if it wasn't Sir James, there was a delegation, people that met with the Prime Minister, including Sir James's daughter, Louis, on the issue of Poco. And I remember clearly that Mr. Eustace saying that he didn't know it.
Well, Sir
James refuted that.
Sir James has given an explanation on the whole administrative involvement himself, Prime Minister. And we have to take him at his word. We have to take him at his word. I think what Mr. Eustace was taking issue with the fact that the cocoa as an alternative industry for St. Vincent had been introduced to the New Democratic Party previously by Sir James, not even before the political campaign. I think that happened at one of our convention exercise. Yeah. And in his own infinite wisdom, he saw that the potential for that. And to the extent it was first introduced at something as important as a convention, it took on a political life. And in fact, in a sense, it was baptized by the New Democratic Party.
So that's where the hurt was.
Yes, but when it came into the election, and it was promoted meeting after meeting by Sir James and equally by Danny Daisy, it became a clarion call for the New Democratic Party. And therefore, people within the New Democratic Party would have felt at this stage there was ownership, and that any further development in terms of the state going forward, that we are entitled to some credit. I don't think that there's an issue as to whether that it should be implemented by the Green Party or the ULP, because we always take a position what's good for St. Vincent. is good for us.
Yeah.
And simply as I understood me, and argument may well have been that, look, if you're going to give the ULP administration a shot at this project, give me a heads up. I think that might have been his argument. And that's not an unreasonable question. So you said James is saying that in fact,
that did happen.
That did happen. And that's where the bone of contention
that he did get the heads up.
That he got the
and beyond that,
yes.
He said that his daughter, Louise, also tried on several occasions to keep
but there's some important
Dr. Friday
distinction that we
and
should,
Adam Eustace in the loop.
we should make with
great
Louise,
frustration.
Louise's involvement. We're speaking about a professional woman.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's also unfortunate that she has to be seen as an appendage to Sir James. She has a professional life of her own. And as I understood it, her involvement was not as a consequence of her being Sir James's daughter, but a professional person who could address the legal issues and ramifications.
And that's fine. But nonetheless, she did try to make contact with
Mr. Eustace
and Dr. Friday,
and they denied that.
And well, I don't know if they denied it, but
well, I don't know either.
It seemed to have been a frustrating exercise. He was met. Well, it was like hitting a brick wall. Anyway, I think that we're at the end of our first section. I'm not going to belabor the Poco issue, but there's just one other thing I want to mention it, and then we'll push on.
Of course.
You're looking at Unrendered, and my guest is the Major, Honorable Sinclair Leacock. Welcome back to Unrendered. I am Tony Regisford. I'm chatting with the Major, Honorable Sinclair Leacock, constituency representative for Central. Sinclair, we're talking, and I want to push on quickly with this Poco thing. There's just one other victim thing, and I could have seen the hurt in Sir James when he was on the program talking about the accusation that he received Poco money. And in fact, coming from the quarters or it's implied that it came from the quarters of the, among other people, your leader's wife, Jennifer Eustace. Now this, obviously, if that got back to James, would be a very hurtful thing. And how do you respond to that? I mean, this seemed to have been something brewing within the NDP that's suggesting that really and truly these guys, the Mitchell camp was selling out, and they were selling out literally for cash.
But Tony, the better way is that, what is so difficult?
Yes.
Really, what is so difficult with Sir James, Arnim, Louise, and Jennifer, before, now, or after, getting together and resolving those issues? I don't know that Jennifer cast any aspersion on Sir James. I don't know that the NDP ever did. I was never party to any sort of thing. I never heard about the accusation until this meeting. And if it was made, obviously it would be painful. Again, one has to show deference to Sir James' statement, but I simply hope that, in fact, that there was a misrepresentation, and then we should move on. But there has to be an urgency and a need for all of the affected parties to understand that this is no time for fractures to take root in the New Democratic. And this is a golden opportunity for magnanimity, and for people to be big men and women in the better interest of the growth and survival of the New Democratic Party. That's what I'm concerned about. So I don't know we have to get down to an either-or situation. If one or the other party have contributed to a political dilemma at the moment, then they should resolve it. And that's what I'm for.
And to address that directly, and I will still stick with the James, to address what you're saying directly. Sir James said, look, it is time for some soul search. The NDP was led to defeat 3 consecutive. Now, that's not a loaded statement. I may have find it sounding to you as if because of the leader, the NDP was defeated. I'm not saying that. So let me just rephrase. The NDP, and I'm rephrasing because this is not what Sir James may have said. So let me just rephrase. The NDP lost 3 consecutive elections under the leadership. He is saying there has to be a fundamental why the people reject you. 3 times. I'm sure he's not of the belief that ULP is that good. So he's an NDP man. So he's not going to even accept that. He's going to look inwards, as he's asking you to do, to look inward and try to understand why this has happened and take the necessary action. Now, is the NDP in a process of restructuring? Is there a need to restructure?
No, well, we can't. Well, of course, the NDP has to look at restructuring and retooling itself. I mean, we are the oldest institution, political institution in Mr. Niveni. What, 36 years or thereabout?
That may mean nothing.
No, it means a lot. It means
for historic interest.
No, it's much more than historic interest.
Well, why?
Very few organizations in this country survive 25 years. That's something I'll address at the academic.
But it doesn't make it good.
It doesn't make it good, neither does it make it bad. The important thing is that you survive. And in the course of 35 years, you can claim 17 of those years to be in governance. So that's almost a 50-50.
How long was Mubarak?
Tony, I'm going to answer you carefully because we have said a lot of things there which has to be spoken to. Let's go back about the fact that Arnhem lost the election straight. That's not true. He would have been the leader in 2001. But he didn't lead the party into that defeat. That defeat was imminent when he took leadership of the New Democratic Party.
Yeah.
I have a privileged position that I am one of those members who was in Grenada for the Grand Beach Accord at the time. And no one other than Sir James from the New Democratic Party was to have a full sense of what took place in Grenada when sentencing came pretty close to civil war. I mean, brothers and sisters weren't even speaking to each other. That's how far we had been fractured as a nation. So when the party was handed to Arnhem Youssef, we were already on a slippery slope going downhill and going there very fast. The party, in fact, had started declining as early as 1998. So how could you credit 2001 law to him? You're perhaps going to say that by 2005, you should have seen some recovery and probably he should have been coming back to government. But that's not the political history of the Caribbean. The political history of the Caribbean is that most governments tend to get 2 terms unless they have done so badly. And if one wants us to be honest, the ULP didn't do that bad in the first 5-year term. In fact, they were able to pick a lot of berries from the low branches because much of the infrastructure had already been put in place from the New Democratic Party. And in addition to that, in fairness to them, they came with some new bold initiatives and ideas.
Yeah.
Much of it was people-centered and was attractive to people. So they were able to consolidate. But you have to marry all of that, with the person who was leading the party. Yusuf always was above the political average of the party. He won his seat in the mainland when everybody was washed overboard.
Right.
And he has done so successfully 4 times. So there must be some affinity to him and respect accorded to him, not just in the constituency, but nationally as a person. So we fast forward now to where we are today. We should have won the 2010 election.
Right.
We didn't. Why we didn't? If you are a leader, you have to take some responsibility. Now, this is where we separate ourselves from the ULP, where as a leader you say you don't take the blame, you take responsibility. Any leader takes both blame and responsibility. The buck stops with me. If the party lost in 2010, it stops with Arnhem Youssef. I'll have to share some of it. I'm a vice president of the party, which is occupied, and Chairman Lewis. But we can explain where a number of things went wrong. And the good fortune of the government with the Thomas eventuality, the fact that we were able to exploit the poverty of the nation to the point that handouts became so material that it affected and impacted the election. But all of that is now water under the bridge. We're here, where we go forward. The New Democratic Party, in its restructuring, as a matured party, has to continue to see what can make itself more attractive to the young people. Let's understand this, When Sir James came to office in 1984, a first-time voter would have been 18. That person is 45 years old today. And 2/3 of this country are under the age of 30. So, to win an election, you're looking for the young mind.
So you have to have appeal.
You have to appeal to the young mind. And we have to do more on message to speak to those young minds while keeping the faithful and the party core.
And I'm listening to you, and I'm going back to what Sir James had to say in his interview. He is saying that, look, examine yourself. Stop, because I don't get it that he is in chorus with you on your present sort of efforts to destabilize the government, your protest actions. He did say he went on the first one and then virtually realized it was going to get nowhere, right? Stop pretending, he's saying by implication, that you're going to form government tomorrow. Stop pretending. Sir James is saying that the emperor is naked.
No, but that is like approbating and reprobating at the same time, because there is something about this current NDP that never existed under Sir James's. They never understood opposition politics and what it is like is to protest and demonstrate. And the issues which took the NDP to the street are fundamental. They go to the root of democracy and of morality and political hygiene. And they're sufficient to have taken to the street. Now, whether we had to be so caught up in demonstration at the expense of abandoning other political activities may be an important debate. But certainly I think those courses of action were necessary and still are necessary.
Sir James is actually saying here that, and he said it, you don't win, you don't get to government through the court. He doesn't trust court in his word. But on a wider sense, this seems to be the direction that, or one of the significant pieces of strategy that the NDP is employing or deploying at the moment through the courts. Win the election on election day. That's Sir James's message.
But I agree that we should win the election day. I have first principle.
Yes.
First principle.
But he's saying you're abandoning those. You seem to be abandoning those. You seem to be caught up doing all this and doing that. When, for example, he says there's a census exercise going.
No, well, you make me chuckle. If we go that way, Sir James will be also be culpable, because Sir James was responsible for our election day machinery. And I think for the constitutional reform exercise, we did a good job. And I think we improved on that job this year. I don't think that our loss in election are on the election day. I think we lost the election because some of our strategies lost sight of some of the initiatives that we should have taken. Let me speak boldly. The ULP saw clearly that they can buy some seats. What happened in North Windward? The lumber, galvanizing, and cement. It's buying of a seat. It's straight. Are you
telling me with a straight face that the NDP used no such tactic to bribe anybody to? Because I am not a believer. I am not a believer that any party.
You want me to take my glasses off to demonstrate that? I'm saying
nobody from the ULP can sit here and tell this. Nobody from the NDP can convince me
that they didn't try to buy a seat.
That those tactics were not used.
Well, I'm saying that
I've been living in St. Vincent.
I'm saying that to you with a straight face, because I'm saying that perhaps the New Democratic Party should have matched the ULP and gone into certain constituencies.
So what happened in North Leeward?
What happened in
Because there's a big claim
in North Leeward?
Yes, the ULP claims that you guys bought that seat.
No.
So it's good for you to say it about the ULP.
Beat the life out of Thompson and the Thompsons in North Leeward. Well, no if and buts.
So the NDP,
there was no material.
The NDP losses were not a result of the ULP beating it.
The NDP losses
were not as a result of the ULP beating it.
Oh yes, in a number of constituencies, I believe the Western Georgia is a case in point.
But you're not accepting the North.
I'm citing an example to support that could be across the board. I think Vinnet got caught up in other political work as PR so much so that, and they had a good candidate in Sesmat, and he just ran away with the constituents. So whether he could do it again, possibly on an East, I think maybe food for thought. But that's a clear case with that constitution. In Eastern George, I think Linton did remarkably well in pulling back. And I believe that other things, hanky-pankies, happen in the East. But it is clear to me now, for example, and you asked me to interject something that you probably haven't raised before. Yeah. But the church, for example, and a particular denomination in the country may have played a role in some of the constituencies as well. I don't think it's by chance now we're having 2 ambassadors being coming out of one church, for instance, independent.
Sinclair, I am afraid
Something to ponder.
that we are at the end of this. And, you know, you bringing up these reasons why you think the NDP lost the election, not as a result of the leadership of the party, but as a result of
I'm saying the buck stops with the leader.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that ultimately, Mr. Yusuf as leader has to take responsibility and take blame. We lost. But I'm saying he may well be in a position to point fingers. Now, that doesn't throw Mr. James's observation overboard. That they think we have to do differently. So you're not going to back me into a corner that it must be either or. Because I went down to the Grenadines this week, and I had a very good earful and view of a lot of people of Sir James's contribution, past, present, Mr. Yusuf, past, and present. And in my own way, I hear people make statements with respect to what they would expect from me or others in the party from here on. So if we are smart, and I think the New Democratic Party will take on board the observations that Sir James is making and understand quite clearly that if we are to form government, we will have to do some things differently. We will have to take more chance, more risk, and prepare ourselves to be more attractive to the young people of the nation.
And on that note, let's go to a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about party restructuring. That's a good note to leave it. You're looking at Unrendered, and my guest is the Major, Honorable Sinclair Leacock. More with Mr. Leacock when we return.